As you know, I just got back from vacation, and I generally try to be open to possible inspirations for teishos from my vacation time and my trips. This time cruising the Danube River, as you may know. But nothing particular came until yesterday on my way home. And then a number of things came, which again shows synchronicity, providence, things come when they're supposed to, and not before. So you can stay loose and open and not cling and be trusting that the universe will give you what you need when you need it. So there's already a teisho. But I had been planning, and I still will use a passage from, it's a page from a book that Joanne kindly gave me a month or so ago called 1 Minute Wisdom. It sounds like one of these quickie fixes that everybody wants today. 1 minute, you can instant oatmeal, instant wisdom, But in fact, each page is 1 minute of wisdom, and it's worth it. By Anthony DeMello, you may know him. If you don't, you should. Indian Jesuit who died prematurely in his 50s, about 30 years ago. Interfaith and contemplative. So these are some quotes from him. So I'll integrate, what I found in this last day, to what I was planning to use anyway. So at the train station, or on my way back, there was this young man, or youngish man, he looked like maybe in his early 30s, who had tattooed on his right arm, "Welcome to the nightmare in my head." Wow. I'd say it was hard to tell exactly how old he was because he's probably been through a lot, but that he would be aware of it and then proclaim it, that's pretty astounding. But of course, he's speaking for us all, if we're honest, at some point in our lives, and as practitioners, I hope it's no longer true for you, that there is a nightmare in our head, the monkey mind at the very least, that we need to combat. And all the religious traditions would affirm that. So that's the task we start with, or that's where we start, if we're honest. And that's what brings us to practice, the nightmare in our head, or our heart, or wherever. So this is a page that I wanted to use. It's called Fantasy, but you'll see why. So it's a little dialogue, usually is between a master and a disciple. So the disciple, what is the greatest enemy of enlightenment? How would you answer that? The master says, fear. Well, I've said many times, and I think you've heard it said, and maybe you've found it for yourself, that easily most of what we do or don't do is out of fear. Within our personal lives, our social lives, our professional lives, our political lives, or just in our own, personal, situation, even in our churches, in our religious life. So that's a pretty good answer. But it continues. And where does fear come from? Delusion. So fear is always a delusion, fundamentally, or ultimately. Now, let's be clear. Fear is a useful, natural reaction to threatening situations. Evolution, God gave us this. Look at the Buddha himself. He had to face the fear during his enlightenment process. Remember Mara and the temptations that came during that night before enlightenment. Or Jesus in the garden, of Gethsemane. So, as you've heard it said many times, courage is not feeling fear, but in the midst of fear, going beyond. And that's where the courage and the overcoming of delusion comes, because you realize that the fear is not ultimate. Fear is ultimately not real in the sense of what's ultimately real. And you can get beyond. I mean, the resurrection or the enlightenment are proof of that they lead beyond. And it always does, as we'll see more here. So you're not seeing the ultimate reality of things if you're caught in fear. And that's how it continues here. So, and what is delusion? To think that the flowers around you are poisonous snakes. So in other words, if you're seeing anything as poisonous snake, you're not seeing its ultimate meaning, even death or disease or whatever. It's not a snake. And ultimately it is a flower. And of course there are all sorts of other more primitive levels like paranoia and projection and all these things that we think we have to be afraid of, and it's all just in our head, the nightmare in your head. So there's all that, even apart from valid fears, relatively speaking. So delusion, in other words, is very true. The flowers are poisonous snakes. So continues, how shall I attain enlightenment then? Open your eyes and see. See what? And the last line is that there isn't a single snake around. Again, there are no snakes. You can perceive them as such. And it's not to say that there aren't dangers and stuff out there, but it's not the ultimate vibration of things. You have to go deeper. A lot of the people who are like possessed, who are seeing danger everywhere and threats everywhere, and the paranoid basically, it's because they're resonating to a certain vibration that's in and around them. It is there, but not ultimately. The deepest vibration of everything is the flower and not the snake. And that's really hard to see. 2 pages later, it develops this idea. How shall I rid myself of fear? And the answer, how can you rid yourself of what you cling to? Oh. And sure enough, the response is, you mean I actually cling to my fears? I cannot agree to that. And the master says, well, consider what your fear protects you from, and you will agree, and you will see your folly. And that goes back to what I was trying to say a moment ago. Ultimately, there's no snake on the ground. So if you're clinging to something you feel you're going to lose, or you're threatened by something, stop clinging. And whatever you think you lose, including your life, it's not really a loss in the end. It's not the deepest vibration of things. Well, what is? Well, so if we approach it, I was looking through the book to see if there's a one-word title to each page, and they're like, 200 pages. None of them is fear. Because there isn't, it's a delusion. So how can you title something? But there is, towards the very end, a page called Fearlessness. Listen to this. What is love? Okay. And the master says, the total absence of fear. Now, I hope you Christians among us remember immediately that verse from St. John's first letter. Perfect love casts out fear. There's no fear. Where love is not perfect, there's fear with it. So perfect love casts out fear. And the deepest vibration of things is perfect love, is compassion. So that obviously casts out fear, which reveals itself as an illusion at a different level of vibration. But listen to this. This is the kicker. So what is it we fear? Love, said the Master. So maybe our ultimate fear is that love, which is the deepest vibration of things. And why do we fear that? Well, the ego fears that because it's going to die. Love kills you. It did Jesus in a very obvious way. But it essentially kills you. It kills the ego. So the ego, which is the only thing in us that can fear, fears it because it means it's death. So now we're getting to the deepest meaning of fear, the delusion of separation, of independence. The fact, instead of being the love which connects everything and shows its inner light, that's maybe what we most fear. That famous phrase that what we most fear is not our worthlessness, but our worth, our deepest identity, is because it's so infinite, so powerful, so swallows up, our ego, our lesser selves, our false self. So here's another thing that came just today in the Richard Rohr meditations. If you've been following Richard Rohr's daily meditations, he has this week he's quoting black women mystics. It absolutely blows your mind. You have no idea. Black women mystics, in America over the past 200 years. So today he quotes Rebecca Cox Jackson, who 1795 to 1871. Born into a free black family in America, but she founded the first black Shaker community in Philadelphia. And he's been quoting the examples of these women who are empowered beyond anything society could ever, allow on that more superficial level of vibration, called to preach the gospel and to be fully themselves and to be prophets. And so she was, but she overcame, it said, a deep fear of lightning. So it can be anything, you have a fear of spiders, you have a fear of heights, here's a fear of lightning. And of course, it's all irrational, basically. It's not to say lightning isn't dangerous, but struck by lightning also is metaphorical, isn't it? It can be like Paul on the way to Damascus, can be struck by lightning, so to speak. But anyway, she overcame it once during a storm. She was praying for deliverance, according to she says herself. And then she says, the cloud bursted, the heavens was clear, the mountain was gone, and I rose to my knees, from my knees, ran downstairs, opened the door to let the lightning in the house. That's facing your fear. You open the door to let the lightning in, the very thing you were afraid of. And of course, it's the lightning, being struck by lightning, the flashes that are quoted in the Psalms of the Lord striking the mountains, and it's like the flashing of the lightning coming down, which are, of course, the absolute touching us, and our mountaintops and our whatever. So that's our deepest identity, and that's probably what we're most afraid of, as I've just been trying to explain. It's the fact that we are that light. We discover that, and there's only the light. Remember Thomas Merton spoke about seeing each person as essentially a bright diamond of light, and how they all come together in that famous vision he had, in Louisville, that we're all that one light, and that light is indestructible, untouchable by anything, including our superficial selves. Remember that. Well, that's the third thing. Today in the page-a-day calendar, Hafiz, the great mystic, Muslim mystic, said, "I wish I could show you when you were lonely or in darkness, the astonishing light of your own being." And if we're lonely or afraid or in darkness, we haven't really seen that light, or seen that the darkness is the light, the whole thing, that light is always there, untouchable and imperishable. Maybe that's what we're afraid of, but that's what casts out all fear, because that light is love. That light is ultimate reality. And number 4. You may be amused by this, but for my beach read, for my vacation read, this time I used a biography of Rock Hudson. The very last page, which I finished yesterday, is a quote from him. And this is, my ultimate point here is nothing against Rock himself. If you read the biography, or you know anything about him, everyone he ever worked with through his whole life said he was just this most wonderful, sweet, generous, engaging person. No one had ever had the least thing to say against him, which says a lot for a star, as you'll see. But what he says here is really, really revealing. So he's helping out, as he often did, a protege, a young actor, asking him his advice. And he says, and the guy asks him, "How did you know you wanted to be an actor?" And this is what he said: "When I was a kid, I dreamt I was in a room, and there were these lights circling 360 degrees around the room. And the lights were pin-spotted in the center of the room on a perfectly cut diamond." Yeah, the immortal diamond, the diamond of Thomas Merton. And he says, in fact, "I saw myself as that diamond." Absolutely true. But listen to what follows. "The lights all around the room and all around the world were focused on me," which was his experience, "and I was filled with the most brilliant light. That was when I truly believed that I was destined to be something special, a star, a diamond, a star, if you will." Now, what's the problem with that? Well, the light is coming from the outside. No! Everyone is something special. Everyone is a star. Everyone is an immortal diamond. So all the kids today and all the people today who want to be famous, who want to be known, who want to have the light shining on them, please, please discover that the light is in you. The light is in you. You are that diamond already. You don't need any artificial light, shining from the outside. The necklace is already around your neck. You're already sitting on the pile of gold. And that's one thing, our friend Anthony DeMello said to college kids, once. He said, "It may take you," and I've quoted this before, "it may take you 50 years or 5 minutes to understand. Everything you're looking for, you already have. It's right here." So don't be looking for the light to be shining on you. Let the light shine from you. Wake up. Overcome your fear of being that light which is intrinsically the light of everything, the light connected to everything. One light. Let it radiate out and shine and give life and light and hope and joy to others who are the same light, who aren't other. And that overcomes all fear, as perfect love does. So don't give in to the delusions and fears. Just radiate that light which heals the world.